Almost everyone who has flown has complained about the food. It tastes flat, under-seasoned, like a version of a meal that never quite arrived. And the natural assumption is that airline catering just is not very good, that the food was prepared hours ago, reheated in a cart, and served without much care for how it lands. Some of that is true, but it does not explain why the same dish, made by the same kitchen with the same ingredients, can taste noticeably different on the ground than it does at cruising altitude. Because the food did not change, something else did. A commercial aircraft cabin is pressurized, but not to sea level. At cruising altitude, the cabin usually feels more like being thousands of feet above sea level than sitting at ground level. That matters for more than just your ears popping. The air inside the cabin is extremely dry, and as humidity drops, the inside of your nose and mouth dry out too. That is a problem because flavor is not only happening on your tongue. Your tongue can detect basic tastes like sweet, salty, sour, bitter, and umami. But much of what you experience as flavor comes from smell, from aroma molecules reaching receptors inside your nose, including from the back of your throat as you chew. That is why food tastes muted when you have a cold. Your tongue still works, but your brain is missing part of the signal. Inside an airplane cabin, a milder version of that starts happening. The meal does not just taste different, it tastes less. That flatness is not just imagination. Under cabin-like conditions, the perception of sweetness and saltiness can drop noticeably. Some studies in airline food tests have suggested reductions in the range of roughly 20 to 30%. So when a meal tastes under-seasoned in the air, it may not have been made that way. It may have been seasoned for a world your senses are no longer fully operating in. Lower pressure changes how aromas move. Dry air weakens the smell signal, and the constant cabin noise adds another layer. Not a dramatic engine roar, just a steady wall of sound your brain learns to ignore, while your senses keep working around it. Together, those conditions make delicate flavors harder to catch. Sweetness can feel duller. Saltiness can feel flatter. A dish that tasted balanced on the ground can arrive at your tray feeling strangely unfinished. You are not tasting the food exactly as it was made. You are tasting it through a cabin that has turned down part of your flavor system. But here is where it gets interesting. Not every flavor is affected equally. Sweetness and saltiness take a harder hit, but umami, the deep, savory taste found in tomatoes, aged cheese, mushrooms, soy sauce, and cooked meat, tends to hold up better, which helps explain one of the strangest airplane food stories, tomato juice. On the ground, many people find it heavy, sharp, or oddly savory. In the air, it can taste more satisfying, not because the tomato juice became better, because the cabin made other flavors fade, while its savory, acidic, umami-heavy profile still had enough strength to register. The drink did not change, your palate did. And tomato juice, by accident of its flavor chemistry, happens to work in the exact environment where many other foods get weaker. This is also why airplane meals often lean towards sauces, stronger seasoning, spices, and foods that can survive reheating. A delicate, crispy dish is a bad candidate for a flight. A saucy meal usually has a better chance, not because airlines are trying to make every dish intense, because a normal dish may arrive at your seat already fighting the room. And that is the part people miss. Airplane food is not being served in a restaurant. It is being served inside a dry, pressurized, noisy machine moving hundreds of people through the sky. The meal has to survive catering, cooling, loading, storage, reheating, timing, safety rules, limited space, and passengers with different tastes sitting inches apart. So the problem is not just flavor. It is flavor under hostile conditions. Too bland, and everyone complains. Too strong, and the cabin smells like one person's dinner. Too delicate, and it dies before it reaches the tray. Airplane food is not just cuisine. It is logistics pretending to be dinner. So the next time airplane food disappoints you, The problem is not entirely in the kitchen. It is partly in the cabin. Lower pressure, drier air, constant noise, a nose that is working at reduced capacity, a palate that has quietly lost some of its range without telling you. The food may deserve some blame. But the bigger reason is the room you are eating it in. The tray is not just serving food. It is serving food against physics, biology, noise, logistics, and cost. That is why airplane food tastes different at 35,000 feet. The food did not completely change. You did. And tomato juice figured that out before the rest of us. If you want more small things with big reasons, subscribe.